Krishna, 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 Hey. Krishna, 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 Hey. Krishna, 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 Rakshamam. Krishna, 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 Pahimam. Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rakshamam. Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Pahimam. Krishna, 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 Hey. Krishna, 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 Hey. Krishna, 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 Hey. Krishna, 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 Pahimam. Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rakshamam. Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Pahimam.
So we're on page 385 of Krishna Book. It's chapter 51, the deliverance of Muchukunda. And then we're on the second paragraph of this page. So, okay. The material qualities are three, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance. When one is placed into the mixed material qualities of passion and ignorance, various kinds of greed and lusty desires impel him to try to find comfort in this material world. When situated in the material quality of goodness, one tries to purify himself by performing various penances and austerities. When one reaches the platform of a real Brahmana, he aspires to merge into the existence of the Lord. But when one desires only to render service unto the lotus feet of the Lord, he is transcendental to all these three qualities. The pure Krishna conscious person is therefore always free from all material qualities. My dear king, Lord Krishna continued, I offered to give you any kind of benediction just to test how much you have advanced in devotional service. Now I can see that you are on the platform of the pure devotees, for your mind is not disturbed by any greedy or lusty desires of this material world. The yogis who try to elevate themselves by controlling the senses and who meditate upon me by practicing the breathing exercise of pranayama are not so thoroughly freed from material desires. It has been seen in several cases that as soon as there is allurement, such yogis again come down to the material platform.
The vivid example verifying this statement is Vishvamrita Muni. Vishvamitra Muni was a great yogi who practiced pranayama, a breathing exercise. But when he was visited by Menaka, a society woman of the heavenly planets, he lost all control and begot in her a daughter named Shakuntala. But the pure devotee, Haridas Thakur, was never disturbed, even when all such allurements were offered by a prostitute. My dear king, Lord Krishna continued, I therefore give you the special benediction that you will always think of me. Thus, you will be able to traverse this material world freely without being contaminated by the material qualities. This statement by the Lord confirms that a person in true Krishna consciousness, engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord under the direction of the spiritual master, is never subject to the contamination of material qualities.
My dear king, the Lord said, because you are a Kshatriya, you have committed the offense of slaughtering animals, both in hunting, political engagements. To become purified, just engage yourself in the practice of bhakti yoga and always keep your mind absorbed in me. Very soon you will be freed from all reaction to such sordid activities. In this statement, it appears that although Kshatriyas are allowed to kill animals in hunting, they are not freed from the resultant contamination of sinful reactions. Therefore, whether one is a Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Brahmin, one is recommended to take sannyas at the end of life to engage himself completely in the service of the Lord and thus become freed from all sinful reactions of his past life. The Lord then assured King Mukunda, in your next life, you will take birth as a first-class Vaishna, the best of the Brahmanas. And in that life, your only business will be to engage yourself in my transcendental service. As a Vaishna is a first-class Brahmana, because one who cannot acquire the qualifications of a bona fide Brahmana cannot come to the platform of a Vaishna. When one becomes a Vaishna, he's completely engaged in welfare activities for all living entities. The highest welfare activities for living entities is preaching of Krishna consciousness. It is stated herein that those who are especially favored by the Lord can become absolutely Krishna conscious and be engaged in the work of preaching the Vaishnava philosophy. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 51st chapter of Krishna, the deliverance of Mukunda.
Chapter 52, Krishna, the Ranachora. When Muchukunda, the celebrated descendant of Ikshvaku dynasty, was favored by Lord Krishna, he circumambulated the Lord within the cave and then came out. On coming out of the cave, Muchukunda saw that the human species had surprisingly been reduced in stature to pygmy size. Similarly, the trees had also been far reduced in size. And Muchukunda could immediately understand that the current age was Kali Yuga. Therefore, without diverting his attention, he began to travel north. Eventually, he reached the mountain known as Gandhama Dana, where there are many trees, such as sandalwood and other flowering trees, whose fragrance made anyone who reached them joyful. He decided to remain in that Gandhama Dana mountain region to execute austerities and penances for the rest of his life. It appears that this place is situated in the northernmost part of the Himalayan mountains, where the abode of Nara Narayan is situated. This place is still existing and is called Badarik Ashrama. In Badarik Ashrama, he engaged himself in the worship of Lord Krishna, tolerating all kinds of pains and pleasures and the dualities of this material world. Lord Krishna returned to the vicinity of Mathura, where he fought with the soldiers of Kalyavana and killed them one after another. After this, he collected all the booty from the dead bodies, and under his direction, it was loaded on bullock carts and brought back to Dwarka. Meanwhile, Jarasandha again attacked Mathura, this time with bigger divisions of soldiers, numbering 23 Akshahunis.
Lord Sri Krishna wanted to save Mathura from the 18th attack of the great military divisions of King Jarasandha. To prevent further killing of soldiers and to attend to other important business, Lord Krishna left the battlefield without fighting. Actually, he was not at all afraid, but he pretended to be an ordinary human being, frightened by the immense quantity of soldiers and resources of Jarasandha. Without any weapons, Krishna left the battlefield. Although his lotus feet were as soft as the petals of a lotus flower, he proceeded for a very long distance on foot. This time, Jarasandha thought that Krishna and Balaram were very much afraid of his military strength and were fleeing the battlefield. He followed them with all his chariots, horses, and infantry. He thought Krishna and Balaram to be ordinary human beings, and he was trying to measure the activities of the Lord. Due to this pastime, Krishna is known as Ranachara, which means one who has left the battlefield. In India, especially in Gujarat, there are many temples of Krishna known as temples of Ranachoraji. Ordinarily, if a king leaves the battlefield without fighting, he is called a coward. But when Krishna enacts this pastime, leaving the battlefield without fighting, he is worshipped by the devotees. A demon always tries to measure the opulence of Krishna, whereas a devotee never tries to measure his strength and opulence, but always surrenders unto him and worships him. By following in the footsteps of pure devotees, we can know that Krishna, the Ranachoraji, left the battlefield not because he was afraid, but because he had some other purpose. The purpose, as it will be revealed, was to attend to a confidential letter sent by Rukmini, his future first wife. Krishna's leaving the battlefield is a display of one of his 6 opulences. Krishna is the supreme powerful, the supreme wealthy, the supreme famous, the supreme wise, and the supreme beautiful. Similarly, he is the supreme renouncer. Srimad Bhagavatam clearly states that he left the battlefield in spite of having ample military strength. Even without his militia, he alone would have been sufficient to defeat the army of Jarasandha, as he had done 17 times before. Therefore, his leaving the battlefield is an example of his supermost opulence renunciation.
After
Thank you, Prabhu. After traversing a very long distance, the brothers pretended to become tired. To mitigate their weariness, they climbed up a mountain many miles above sea level. This mountain was called Pravarshana due to constant rain, for the peak was always covered with clouds sent by Indra. Jarasandha took it for granted that the 2 brothers were afraid of his military power and had hidden themselves at the top of the mountain. First, he tried to find them, searching for a long time, but then he failed. He decided to trap and kill them by setting fires around the peak. He therefore surrounded the peak with firewood and set it ablaze. As the fire spread more and more, Krishna and Balarama jumped from the top of the mountain down to the ground, a distance of 88 miles. Thus, while the peak was burning up, Krishna and Balaram escaped unseen by Jarasandha or his men. Jarasandha concluded that the 2 brothers had burned to ashes and that there was no need of further fighting. Thinking himself successful in his efforts, he left the city of Mathura and returned to his home in the kingdom of Magadha. Gradually, Krishna and Balarama reached the city of Dwarka, which was surrounded by sea. Following this, Sri Balaram married Revati, daughter of King Raivata, ruler of Anarta province. This explained in the 9th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. After the marriage of Baladeva, Krishna married Rukmini. Rukmini was the daughter of King Bhishmaka, ruler of the province known as Vidarbha. Just as Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, Vasudev, Rukmini, is the supreme goddess of fortune. Mahalakshmi. According to the authority of Chaitanya Charitamrita, the expansion of Krishna and that of Srimati Radharani are simultaneous. Krishna expands himself into various Vishnu tattva forms, and Srimati Radharani expands herself into various Shakti tattva forms by her internal potency as multi-forms of the goddess of fortune.
According to Vedic convention, there are eight kinds of marriage. In the first-class marriage system, the parents of the bride and bridegroom arrange the marriage date. Then, in royal style, the bridegroom goes to the house of the bride, and in the presence of brahmanas, priests, and relatives, the bride is given in charity to the bridegroom. Besides this, there are other systems, such as the Gandharva and Rakshasa marriages. Krishna married Rukmini according to the Rakshasa system, kidnapping her in the presence of his many rivals like Shishupala, Jarasandha, and Shalva. While Rukmini was being given in charity to Shishupala, Krishna snatched her from the marriage arena exactly as Garuda snatched a pot of nectar from the demigods. Rukmini, the only daughter of King Bhishmaka, was exquisitely beautiful. She was known as Ruchira Nana, which means one who has a beautiful face, expanded like a lotus flower. Devotees of Krishna are always eager to hear about the transcendental activities of the Lord. His activities of fighting, kidnapping, and running away from the battlefield are all transcendental, being on the absolute platform. And devotees take a transcendental interest in hearing of them. The pure devotee does not make the distinction that some activities of the Lord should be heard and others avoided. There is, however, a class of so-called devotees known as Prakriti Sahajiyas, who are very much interested in hearing about Krishna's Rasa Leela with the gopis, but not about his fighting with his enemies. They do not know that his bellicose activities and his friendly activities with the gopis are equally transcendental, being on the transcendental platform. All the transcendental pastimes of Krishna described in Srimad Bhagavatam are relished by pure devotees through submissive oral reception. They do not reject even a drop.
The story of Krishna's marriage with Rukmini is described as follows. The king of Vidarbha, Maharaj Bhishmaka, was very qualified and devoted. He had 5 sons and only 1 daughter. The first son was known as Rukmi, the second Rukmaratha, the third Rukmabahu, the fourth Rukmakesha, and the fifth Rukmamali. The brothers had 1 young sister, Rukmini. She was beautiful and chaste, and was meant to be married to Lord Krishna. Many saintly persons and sages like Narada Muni used to visit the palace of King Bhishmaka. Naturally, Rukmini had a chance to talk with them, and in this way she obtained She was informed about the 6 opulences of Krishna, and simply by hearing about him, she desired to surrender herself to his lotus feet and become his wife. Krishna had also heard of Rukmini. She was the reservoir of all transcendental qualities, intelligence, auspicious physical features, liberal mindedness, exquisite beauty, and righteous behavior. Krishna therefore decided that she was fit to be his wife. All of the relatives of King Bhishmaka decided that Rukmini should be given in marriage to Krishna. But her elder brother, Rukmi, despite the desire of the others, arranged for her marriage with Shishupala, a determined enemy of Krishna. When the black-eyed, beautiful Rukmini heard of the settlement, she immediately became very morose. However, being a king's daughter, she understood political diplomacy and decided that there was no use in simply being morose. Some steps should be taken immediately. After some deliberation, she decided to send a message to Krishna, and so that she might not be deceived, she selected a qualified Brahmana as her messenger. As such a qualified Brahmana is always truthful and is a devotee of Vishnu. Without delay, she sent the Brahmana to Dwaraka. Reaching the gate of Dwaraka, the Brahmana informed the doorkeeper of his arrival, and the doorkeeper led him to the place where Krishna was sitting on a golden throne. Since the Brahmana had the opportunity to be Rukmini's messenger, he was fortunate enough to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, the original cause of all causes. A Brahmana is the spiritual teacher of all the social divisions. Lord Sri Krishna, in order to teach everyone the Vedic etiquette of how to respect a Brahmana, immediately got up and offered him his throne. When the Brahmana was seated on the golden throne, Lord Sri Krishna began to worship him exactly as the demigods worship Krishna. In this way, he taught everyone that worshiping his devotee is more valuable than worshiping him.
In due time, the Brahmana took his bath, accepted his meals, and lay down to rest on a bedstead completely bedecked with soft silk. As he was resting, Lord Sri Krishna silently approached and, with great respect, put the Brahmana's legs on his lap and began to massage them. In this way, Krishna appeared before the Brahmana and said, "My dear Brahmana, I hope that you are executing the religious principles without difficulty and that your mind is always peaceful. Different classes of people in the social system are engaged in various professions, and when one inquires as to the well-being of a particular person, he should do so on the basis of that person's occupation. Therefore, when one inquires as to the welfare of a Brahmana, the question should be worded according to his condition of life so as not to disturb him. A peaceful mind is the basis for becoming truthful, clean, equipoised, self-controlled, and tolerant. Thus, by attaining knowledge and knowing its practical application in life, one becomes convinced about the absolute truth. The Brahmana knew Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and still he accepted the respectful service of the Lord on the grounds of Vedic social convention. Lord Sri Krishna was playing just like a human being, because he belonged to the Kshatriya division of the social system and was a young boy. It was his duty to show respect to such a Brahmana. Lord Krishna continued, "O best of all the Brahmanas, you should always remain satisfied. For if a Brahmana is always self-satisfied, he will not deviate from his prescribed duties. And simply by sticking to one's prescribed duties, everyone, especially a Brahmana, can attain the highest perfection of all desires. Even if a person is as opulent as the king of heaven, Indra, if he is not satisfied, he inevitably has to transmigrate from one planet to another. Such a person can never be happy under any circumstances. But if one's mind is satisfied, even if he is bereft of all possessions, he can be happy living anywhere."
This instruction by Krishna to the Brahmana is very significant. The purport is that a true Brahmana should not be disturbed by any situation In this modern age, Kali Yuga, the so-called Brahmanas have accepted the abominable position of Shudras or less, and still want to pass as qualified Brahmanas. Actually, a qualified Brahmana always sticks to his own duties and never accepts those of a Shudra or one of less than a Shudra. It is advised in the authorized scriptures that a Brahmana may, under awkward circumstances, accept the profession of a Kshatriya or even a Vaishya, but never is he to accept the profession of a Shudra. Lord Krishna declared that a Brahmana will never be disturbed by any adverse conditions if he scrupulously sticks to his religious principles. In conclusion, Lord Sri Krishna said, I offer my respectful obeisances to the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, for the Brahmanas are always self-satisfied, and the Vaishnavas are always engaged in actual welfare activities for human society. They are the best of friends and of the people in general, and they are free from false egoism and are always in a peaceful condition of mind. Lord Krishna then desired to know about the rulers, Kshatriyas, in the Brahmanas' kingdom, so he inquired whether the citizens of the kingdom were all happy. A king's qualification is judged by the temperament of the people in the kingdom. If they are happy in all respects, it is to be understood that the king is honest and is executing his duties rightly. Krishna said that the king in whose kingdom the citizens are happy is very dear to him. Of course, Krishna could understand that the Brahmana had come with a confidential message. Therefore, he said, if you have no objection, I give you liberty to speak about your mission.
Thus, being very much satisfied by these transcendental pastimes with the Lord, the Brahmana narrated the whole story of his mission in coming to see Krishna. He got out the letter Rukmini had written to Krishna and said, These are the words of Princess Rukmini, my dear Krishna. O infallible and most beautiful one, any human being who happens to hear about your transcendental form and pastimes immediately absorbs through his ears your name, fame, and qualities. Thus, all his material pangs subside, and he fixes your form in his heart. Through such transcendental love for you, he always sees you within himself, and by this process, all his desires are fulfilled. Similarly, I have heard of your transcendental qualities. I may be shameless in expressing myself directly, but you have captivated me and taken my heart. You may doubt my steadiness of character, since how could an unmarried girl like me approach you without any shame? But, my dear Mukunda, you are the supreme lion among human beings, the supreme person among persons. Any girl, although not yet having left her home, or even any woman of the highest chastity, would desire to marry you, being captivated by your unprecedented character, knowledge, opulence, and position. I know that you are the husband of the goddess of fortune, and you are very kind toward your devotees. Therefore, I have decided to become your eternal maidservant. My dear Lord, I dedicate my life and soul unto your lotus feet. I have selected your lordship as my husband, and I therefore request you to accept me as your wife. You are the supreme powerful, O lotus-eyed one. Now I belong to you. If that which is enjoyable for the lion to eat is taken away by the jackal, it will be a ludicrous affair. Therefore, I request you to immediately take care of me before I am taken away by Shishupal and other princes like him. My dear Lord, in my previous life, I may have done public welfare work like digging wells and planting trees, or pious activities such as performing ritualistic ceremonies and sacrifices and serving superiors like the spiritual master, Brahmanas, and Vaishnavas. By these activities, perhaps I have pleased the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan. If this be so, then I wish that you, Lord Krishna, the brother of Lord Balaram, please come here and catch hold of my hand so that I shall not be touched by Shishupal and his company. Rukmini's marriage with Shishupal was already settled. Therefore, she suggested that Krishna kidnap her so that this might be changed. This sort of marriage, in which the girl is kidnapped by force, is known as Rakshasa and is practiced among Kshatriyas, or men with an administrative martial spirit. Because her marriage was already arranged to take place the next day, Rukmini suggested that Krishna come there incognito to kidnap her and then fight with Shishupal and his allies like the king of Magadha. Knowing that no one could conquer Krishna, who would certainly emerge victorious, she addressed him as Ajita, the unconquerable Lord.
Rukmini told Krishna not to be concerned that the fighting would take place within the palace and that many of her family members, including other women, might thus be wounded or even killed. As the king of a country thinks of diplomatic ways to achieve his object, Rukmini, being the daughter of a king, was diplomatic in suggesting how this unnecessary and undesirable killing could be avoided. She explained that it was custom of her family to visit the temple of the goddess Durga, their family deity, before a marriage. The Kshatriya kings were mostly staunch Vaishnavas, worshipping Lord Vishnu in either the Radha Krishna or Lakshmi Narayan form. Still, for their material welfare, they used to worship goddess Durga. They never made the mistake, however, of accepting them. Accepting the demigods as the supreme lord on a level of Vishnu Tattva, as do some less intelligent men. To avoid the unnecessary killing of her relatives, Rukmini suggested that it would be easier for him to kidnap her while she was either going from the palace to the temple or else returning home. She also explained to Krishna why she was so anxious to marry him, even though her marriage was to take place with Shishupal, who was also qualified, being the son of a great king. Rukmini said that she did not think anyone was greater than Krishna, not even Lord Shiva, who is known as Mahadeva, the greatest of all demigods. Lord Shiva also seeks the pleasure of Lord Krishna in order to be delivered from his entanglement and the quality of ignorance within the material world. Although Lord Shiva is the greatest of all great souls, Mahatmas, he keeps on his head the purifying waters of the Ganges, which emanate from a hole in this material universe made by the toe of Lord Vishnu. Lord Shiva is in charge of the material quality of ignorance, and to keep himself in a transcendental position, he always meditates on Lord Vishnu, or Krishna, and always tries to purify himself with the waters of the Ganges. Therefore, Rukmini knew very well that obtaining the favor of Krishna was not easy. Since even Lord Shiva must purify himself for this purpose, surely it would be difficult for Rukmini, who was only the daughter of a Kshatriya king. Thus, she desired to dedicate her life to observing severe austerities and penance, such as fasting and going without bodily comforts. If it were not possible in this lifetime to gain Krishna's favors by these activities, she was prepared to die for such austerities and to undergo similar difficulties lifetime after lifetime. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that a pure devotee of the Lord executes devotional service with great determination. Such determination, as exhibited by Rukmini Devi, is the only price for purchasing Krishna's favor. One should be strongly determined in Krishna consciousness, and that is the way to ultimate success.
After relaying Rukmini Devi's statement to Krishna, the Brahmin said, "My dear Krishna, chief of the Yadu dynasty, I have brought this confidential message for you from Rukmini. Now it is placed before you for your consideration. After due diligence, you may act as you please, but if you want to do something, you must do it immediately. There's not much time left for action." Thus in the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 52nd chapter of Krishna the Ranchora. Chapter 53, Krishna kidnaps Rukmini. After hearing Rukmini's statement, Lord Krishna was very much pleased. He immediately shook hands with the Brahmin and said, "My dear Brahmin, I am very glad to hear that Rukmini is eager to marry me, since I am also eager to get her hand. My mind is always absorbed in thoughts of the daughter of Bhishmaka, and sometimes I cannot sleep at night because I am thinking of her. I can understand that the marriage of Rukmini with Shishupal has been arranged by her elder brother in a spirit of animosity toward me, so I am determined to give a good lesson to all of these princes. Just as one extracts and uses fire after manipulating ordinary wood, after dealing with these demoniac princes, I shall bring forth Rukmini like fire from their midst.
Krishna, upon being informed of the specific date of Rukmini's marriage, was anxious to leave immediately. He asked his driver, Dwarika, to harness the horses for his chariot and prepare to go to the kingdom of Vidarbha. After hearing this order, the driver brought Krishna's 4 special horses. The names and descriptions of these horses are mentioned in the Padma Purana. The first one, Shaibya, was greenish. The second, Sugriva, was grayish like ice. The third, Megha Pushpa, was the color of a new cloud. And the last, Palakhaka, was of ashen color. When the horses were yoked and the chariot was ready to go, Krishna helped the Brahmana up and gave him a seat by his side. Immediately they started from Dwarka, and within one night arrived at the province of Vidarbha. The kingdom of Dwarka is situated in the western part of India, and Vidarbha is situated in the northern part. They are separated by a distance of not less than 1,000 miles, but the horses were so fast that they reached their destination, a town called Kundina, within one night or at most 12 hours. King Bhishmaka was not enthusiastic about handing his daughter over to Shishupal, but he was obliged to accept the marriage settlement due to his affectionate attachment for his eldest son, who had negotiated it. As a matter of duty, the king was decorating the city for the marriage ceremony and acting in great earnestness to make it very successful. Water was sprinkled all over the streets, and the city was cleansed very nicely. Since India is situated in the tropical zone, the atmosphere is always dry. Dust always accumulates on the streets and roads, so they must be sprinkled with water at least once a day, and in big cities like Calcutta, twice a day. The roads of Kundina were arrayed with colored flags and festoons, and gates were constructed at particular crossings. The whole city was decorated very nicely. The beauty of the city was enhanced by the inhabitants, both men and women, who were dressed in fresh washed clothes and decorated with sandalwood pearl necklaces and flower garlands. Incense burned everywhere, and fragrances like agaru scented the air. Priests and brahmanas were sumptuously fed, and according to ritualistic ceremony, were given sufficient wealth and cows in charity. In this way, they were engaged in chanting Vedic hymns. The king's daughter, Rukmini, was exquisitely beautiful. She was very clean and had beautiful teeth. The auspicious sacred thread was tied on her waist. She was given various types of jewelry to wear and long silken cloths to cover the upper and lower parts of her body. Learned priests gave her protection by chanting mantras from the Samaveda, Rigveda, and Yajurveda. Then they chanted mantras from the Atharva Veda and offered oblations in the fire to pacify the influence of different stars.
King Bhishmaka was experienced in dealing with brahmanas and priests when such ceremonies were held. He specifically honored the brahmanas by giving them large quantities of gold and silver, grain mixed with molasses, and cows decorated with cloth and ornaments. Dhamaghosh, Shishupal's father, executed all kinds of ritualistic performances to invoke good fortune for his son. Shishupal's father was known as Dhamaghosh due to his superior ability to cut down unregulated citizens. Dhamma means curbing down, and Ghosh means famous. So he was famous for controlling the citizens. Dhamaghosh thought that if Krishna came to disturb the marriage ceremony, he would certainly cut him down with his military power. Therefore, after performing the various auspicious ceremonies, Dhamaghosh gathered his military divisions. He took many elephants garlanded with golden necklaces and many similarly decorated chariots and horses. It appeared that Dhamaghosh, along with his son and other companions, was going to Kundina not exactly to get Shishupal married, but mainly to fight.
King Bhishmaka was not in, When King Bhishmaka learned that Dhamaghosh and his party were arriving, he left the city to receive them. Outside the city gate were many gardens where guests were welcome to stay. In the Vedic system of marriage, the bride's father receives the large party of the bridegroom and accommodates them in a suitable place for 2 or 3 days until the marriage ceremony is performed. The party led by Dhamaghosh contained thousands of men, among whom the prominent kings and personalities were Jarasandha, Dantavakra, Vidurata, and Paundraka. It was an open secret that Rukmini was meant to be married to Krishna, but that her elder brother Rukmi had arranged her marriage to Shishupal. There was also some whispering about a rumor that Rukmini had sent a messenger to Krishna. Therefore, the soldiers suspected that Krishna might cause a disturbance by attempting to kidnap Rukmini. Even though they were not without fear, they were all prepared to give Krishna a good fight to prevent the girl from being taken away. Sri Balarama received the news that Krishna had left for Kundina, accompanied only by a Brahmana, and that Shishupal was there with a large number of soldiers. Balarama suspected that they would attack Krishna, and thus out of great affection for his brother, he took strong military divisions of chariots, infantry, horses, and elephants, and went to the precincts of Kundina. Meanwhile, inside the palace, Rukmini was expecting Krishna to arrive. But when neither he nor the Brahmana who took her message appeared, she was full of anxiety and began to think how unfortunate she was. There is only one night between today and my marriage day, and still neither the Brahmana nor Shamasundara has returned. I cannot ascertain any reason for this. Having little hope, she thought that perhaps Krishna had found reason to become dissatisfied and had rejected her fair proposal. As a result, the Brahmana might have become disappointed and not come back. Although she was thinking of various causes for the delay, she expected them both at any moment.
Rukmini further thought that demigods such as Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Goddess Durga might have been displeased. It is generally said that the demigods become angry when not properly worshipped. For instance, when Indra found that the inhabitants of Vrindava were not worshipping him, Krishna having stopped the Indra Yajna, he became angry and wanted to chastise them. Thus, Rukmini thought that since she did not worship Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma very much, they might have become angry and tried to frustrate her plan. Similarly, she thought that Goddess Durga, the wife of Lord Shiva, might have taken the side of her husband. Lord Shiva is known as Rudra, and his wife is known as Rudrarani. Rudrarani and Rudra refer to those who are accustomed to putting others in distress to cry forever. Rukmini was thinking of the goddess Durga as Girija, the daughter of the Himalayan mountains. The Himalayan mountains are very cold and hard, and she thought of goddess Durga as hard-hearted and cold. In her anxiety to see Krishna, Rukmini who was after all still a child, thought this way about different demigods. The gopis worship goddess Katyayani to get Krishna as her husband. Similarly, Rukmini was thinking of the various types of demigods, not for material benefit, but in respect to Krishna. Praying to the demigods to achieve the favor of Krishna is not irregular, and Rukmini was fully absorbed in the thoughts of Krishna. Even though she pacified herself by thinking that the time of Govinda to arrive had not yet expired, Rukmini felt that she was hoping against hope. Not expressing her mind to anyone, she simply shed tears, unobserved by others. And when her tears became more forceful, she closed her eyes in helplessness. While Rukmini was in such deep thought, auspicious symptoms appeared in different parts of her body. Trembling began to occur in her left eyelid, arm, and thigh. When trembling occurs in these parts of the body, it is an auspicious sign indicating that something lucrative can be expected.
Just then, Rukmini, full of anxiety, saw the Brahmana messenger. Krishna, being the supersoul of all living beings, could understand Rukmini's anxiety. Therefore, he sent the Brahmana inside the palace to let her know that he had arrived. When Rukmini saw the Brahmana, she could understand the auspicious trembling of her body and immediately became elated. She smiled and inquired whether Krishna had already come. The Brahmana replied that the son of the Yadu dynasty, Sri Krishna, had arrived. He further encouraged her by saying that Krishna had promised to carry her away without fail. Rukmini was so elated by the Brahmana's message that she wanted to give him in charity everything she possessed. However, finding nothing suitable for presentation, she simply offered him her respectful obeisances. The significance of offering respectful obeisances to a superior is that the one offering obeisances is obliged to the respected person. In other words, Rukmini implied that she would remain ever grateful to the Brahmana. Anyone who gets the favor of the goddess of fortune, as did this Brahmana, is without a doubt always happy in material opulence. When King Bhishmaka heard that Krishna and Balaram had come, he invited them to see the marriage ceremony of his daughter. Immediately, he arranged to receive them along with their soldiers in a suitable garden house. As was the Vedic custom, the king offered Krishna and Balaram honey and fresh washed garments. He was hospitable not only to Krishna, Balaram, and kings such as Jarasandha, but also to many other kings and princes according to their personal strength, age, and material possessions. Out of curiosity and eagerness, the people of Kundina assembled before Krishna and Balaram to drink the nectar of their beauty. With tearful eyes, they offered Krishna and Balaram their silent respects. They were very much pleased, considering Lord Krishna the suitable match for Rukmini. They were so eager to unite Krishna and Rukmini that they prayed to the personality of Godhead. Our dear Lord, if we have performed any pious activities with which you are satisfied, kindly be merciful upon us and accept the hand of Rukmini. It appears that Rukmini was a very popular princess, and all the citizens, out of intense love for her, prayed for her best fortune. In the meantime, Rukmini, being very nicely dressed and protected by bodyguards, came out of the palace to visit the temple of Ambika, goddess Durga.
We'll stop now. Krishna Book ki jai.